Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another Photo Mish Mash. This one being broadcast live August 4th, 2021. We have a great show, and I'm so excited to welcome back to the show, Tonya. Tonya, how you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me again.
Sure. The last couple of shows, we've really been focused on just kind of sharing some actionable, simple tips, better family vacation photos, better actual travel photos. And then today I thought, with it's just you and me, let's take some time to talk a little bit about macro photos. You might know a thing or two about macro photos.
I do spend a little bit of time with my macro lens, and I really did this. Really, the past 5 days, I've barely taken it off of my camera, and I just spent hours with it. So, yeah, I've been shooting a lot of macro, but I've been shooting a lot of everything lately. I did a senior session, and then I traveled to the mountains with my family, and I was shooting macro most of the weekend, except for I did take time for a new self-portrait. And then I came home this morning, and I was shooting interiors. And Friday, I have a really creative headshot session with a fellow creative. So that kind of makes things interesting, I think.
Nice. I'm sorry, did you say that was last Friday or that's coming up this week?
That's coming up this week. So
exciting.
I'm just getting a little bit of everything right now.
That's right. That's right. And I just put below on the screen your Instagram. That one Instagram is the best place to go to see what you're up to from time to time as you post. But from there, you can get direct links to your macro, which I just want to take a moment and bring up because, yeah, that has inspired me to share a little bit more about macro photography and talk about it this weekend. And somewhere I just pulled up your Instagram, maybe not. So real quick, I'm going to get that up on the screen and share for a moment. And just let's talk a little bit about what you were looking for this weekend when you went out into the mountains to start to photograph some macro. I
have to say, I get frustrated with macro because I can take a macro shot all day long, but there's a difference between capturing a macro photo well and I think creating artwork. And I'm trying to hit that other level where I want people to feel like they're part of a miniature world and just more than butterflies and flowers, Not to say there's anything wrong with that. I like some butterfly and flower shots, but I do like subjects that tend to be a little bit more on the creepy side. But I think that's because we avoid that any other time in our lives, but it's safe to look at them in artwork.
I like that idea, yeah, because you don't have to worry about this toad jumping on you and giving you warts, right?
Right. I'm not worried about that anyway, but in case somebody is.
Yeah. And I think I love that. I love that idea of kind of creating or giving people a glimpse into this miniature world, more than just a close-up picture of a creature, but really taking you into their world and what they might be experiencing as they move through it.
Well,
go ahead.
The first day I was out, I was so frustrated because I spent probably 4 hours the first day and walked away with maybe one image that I wanted to share. And I felt like it was such a failure of an afternoon. But the next day I went out and I realized that what actually had happened that day was that I had scouted my locations and I had learned what I was going to find where, and that made the next day far more successful. So I think that I forget that macro photography requires the same level of work as like if you were going on a McKay trip and you have to scout your locations first and learn your lighting and how things are going to kind of fall into place at certain times. And so the first day I really didn't produce anything. But then the next few days I knew where to go when and what I was looking for. So
yeah. Awesome. Well, and I think Taylor gave this advice on the show last week, and we say it often when we're out on workshops, but don't think that, or don't put that pressure on yourself to, create so many images every time you go out. And in your case, you realized that it was a great learning experience and set you up for success in the following days.
Yeah. And really, I felt like there were a lot of images that I liked and that I was going to post, but very few that I felt like were competition level. Maybe not any. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. Cool. Good. Well, I'm excited. Again, I'm sure you have some more tips to share. I have a couple of tips to share as well. So we'll get to that discussion a little bit later on. A couple other things that I want to do real quick is one, welcome the chat room. As always, we really appreciate you hanging out with us. If you haven't already, give that thumbs up. And if you're watching the show and you're wondering what it's about, it's a discussion of all things photography. And if you're in the chat room, you should say hi. Let us know where you're from. If you're not a Pen member, you should consider joining. There's so much great content within the Pen community, and just the fantasticness of the Pen community is I think worth the value of joining. But then on top of that, all of that educational material as well. So welcome to all of you that are joining us from wherever you are. Thank you. We got lots of other stuff to talk about too. One, Tonya, you and I were just talking about this before the show. I am now able to post to Instagram straight from my desktop using nothing other than a browser. I want to know in the chat room if this is live for you. I'll show this in a few moments, and I will tell you why I probably won't use it too often, and why I will still pay for my current website of choice for posting to Instagram is Plan Only. That's really hard to say. Plan Only. I'll show you that and demonstrate that and talk about why. And also, Tonya, I'll get your opinions on how you feel about this. We also want to talk about Photoshop's neural filters. I don't know how long this new filter has been in there. And I'll put new in quotes because I don't know how long it's been there for, but it's blowing my mind a little bit. So I want to share some thoughts about that. And I've got not one, but two embarrassing photography related stories to share. Maybe I'll start with the first one just right off the bat, in case that's what brought people. They want to hear my embarrassing stories. So the first one of the two is that it has two parts, really. Both are embarrassing. Part one is the fact that I crashed and ruined my Mavic Pro drone while on the Alaska trip back in June. Taking off from a moving boat, I'm actually not terribly embarrassed by this because I don't feel like I did anything wrong. I don't know what caused the drone to fail, but basically it just started to take off and then cut engines and just dove into the salt water behind the boat.
That's more sad than embarrassing.
Yeah, I guess that's true. There is the potential that maybe I didn't wait until the GPS lock was complete, but I have taken off at other times without that, and it should not have been an issue in this case. But it would have been smarter to make sure it really had a full lock on all satellites, not just a partial lock, because that's what helps it really hold in place and know exactly where it is in the world, its altitude and its relation to you. But I didn't quite wait for that to happen. And for whatever reason, it just dove into the water. Okay, so I sent it off to DJI just to say, hey, can you repair this? Of course not. Inside is completely corroded from the minute it spent in the salt water. And it really was just about a minute. It wasn't very long, but salt water and any kind of electronics they don't mix very well. So now comes the embarrassing part. I had an extra battery that wasn't involved in that crash, so it was perfectly fine. I had a handful of extra props, some of them brand new in the box still, and the remote, which I don't need anymore. And I have upgraded to the Mavic 2S, Air 2S, which is smaller, lighter, but it's better in image quality and capabilities than the bigger Mavic, and it's good enough for me and what I need. So that's what I bought. So I put this all on Facebook Marketplace. I see David Carr having great success. I'm like, I'm going to try this. And I looked up the price of the battery, knew they're about 130 or so. So I put it on there with all this stuff, 99 bucks. Started getting a lot of interest right away. And I put it on there yesterday morning. And by yesterday night, I sold it. Met the guy down the hill from my house, handed it off to him. And he was really grateful. He had gotten there a bit later than he said. And he's like, here's an extra 20 bucks for me being so late. And I was like, all right, I'll take that because you were much later than you said. And then Chris is like, well, he really was quick to give you that extra $20. How much was all of that stuff worth? And that's when I actually went and looked up the price of the remote. I hadn't done that at that point yet.
Oh no.
And the remote used sells for close to $300. So
that's a big deal.
he got a great deal. So I don't know why I didn't check the remote. I think part of my thinking was it's no longer any use to me. So let me pass it on. But maybe I could have set a slightly more fair price and gotten at least another $100 for it or so. But you know what? He was really excited. He was buying it not for the battery, but mostly for the remote because he wrecked his remote. And it's actually easy to do on those. I don't have the remote anymore. I can't show you. It has that little micro USB jack on the side. And if you're not careful, you can put in the micro USB upside down and then you ruin that port. I've almost done it. And so that's what he had done to his. And he was very excited to now get a new remote. So you know, the story turns out okay. But let my embarrassment be a lesson in that carefully look at what things are selling for used and then use all of what you're selling to determine the price of the whole package.
I don't think you need to be embarrassed about that. You just need to chalk that up to blessing somebody else.
Yes, I know. But, you know, I guess, yes, you're right. I will. Sure. Maybe karma will come around and somebody will sell me something cheaper or just, you know, I'm glad I could make his day, really.
Yeah.
So we'll stay with that. Yeah. All right. I'll save the other embarrassing story for a little bit later in the show as a tease.
Okay.
It's you know, it's just kind of embarrassing.
I've never flown a drone, so I think if you ever want to feel better about yourself, you could let me fly one into the ground. I feel like that would go very poorly for me.
You know, honestly, they are very easy to fly. What they really are these days. You know, I have the new remote. I mean, you can press a button for it to take off, and then it takes off and it waits there for you to input on the sticks which direction you want it to go, up, down, left, right, forward, backward. And you can push another button to have it come back and land. And it really does work really well these days. What is a little bit more challenging is if you're trying to get nice cinematic video and you want those kind of smooth movements. But there's a lot of like extra features in these drones these days that will do the kind of motion for you. I still like to fly it myself because if you're tracking an object, every once in a while the drone can get confused and it kind of loses it for a minute. And there's that kind of herky jerkiness as it catches up and things like that. But I'll say that in general, they really aren't that hard to fly. We need to change that for you. We need to get a drone in your hands at some point so you can start a new Instagram that is just dedicated to drone photography. Yeah.
That's all I need is another Instagram.
Yeah. You know, they're a lot of fun. I'm really pretty impressed with this Air 2S. If anybody's looking for a drone that's going to be powerful enough for them to grow with them, both for photos and videos, the Air 2S is great. But you can also save a bunch and get the Mini 2. You lose some of those kind of fun features of the tracking and the higher quality video, and it has a smaller sensor, but it still is very capable. And those are selling for like $499. It's pretty impressive these days. So we'll see.
Well, you almost had me sold when you posted that self-portrait on the paddleboard.
Oh, I know. That was a lot of fun.
That was enough for me to be like, I might need a drone.
I know. It's another way to think of drones is as a very expensive selfie stick.
That's right.
Basically, that's what it is. And I, on the Alaska trip, before I crashed the drone, I think it has the distinction of the first McKay workshop where I have used the drone to take the group photo. That is our official group photo. It was captured from the drone, and it is absolutely high quality enough. So I don't know if we've shared that out with everybody yet. David needs to put the logos on there and then share that out with everybody. So, all right. Let's jump into part of the show that we really enjoy a lot, and that is taking a moment to review Pen member photos. So if you are watching this and you're not a Pen member, of course, I've already gave a little plug for Pen. I'll just say real quick again, you can learn all about them by going to photorec.tv/Pen. pen. One of the many benefits is that you get to submit photos to this weekly show and to have us give you some feedback and teach you a little bit of Lightroom and Photoshop tips and tricks while we do it as well. So let's jump right in to this and talk a little bit about our images that we got today. So first up from Pam, the name of this, Pam, is Butterflies 2010. Pam, this looks like an owl. I don't think this is a butterfly, but we'll let that slide. We'll let that slide. All right.
Where's his beak?
You know, he's very interesting. I think he's got this little owl mustache. This little owl feathers covering over his... I have no idea what kind of owl this is. I don't think this is one typically found in America. I could be wrong, though. But those are some gorgeous eyes. And yes, very, very pretty. So, Tonya, I'm going to do something right off the bat, and you let me know whether or not you think it's good or bad. I'm going to come in. It is getting a little tight on him, but we have just a little bit of this kind of glimpse of some other background behind the tree there that I think we can get rid of in that hot spot down here in the middle. We could maybe not come in quite as tight and then just try to clone that out a little bit.
Yeah, the light dappling coming through the trees is a shame because it's almost monochromatic with the exception of the eyes.
Mm-hmm.
If we could just extend that tree background to the right side. And I think that would have a lot of impact. So, but I would probably do that in Photoshop and maybe use
I agree.
A different portion of the tree.
Gotcha. Yep. So filling in this little bit of green splash that we're showing up back here, because again, your eyes are drawn off to something very bright. And other than that, what really draws your eyes is the owl's eyes. I mean, they are just fantastic.
Yeah.
Really pretty cool. Was it DH Don Digital? His face looks like a butterfly. I agree. That's actually kind of a cool point that he has kind of a butterfly-ish face. Tonya, let me ask you, when you're in Photoshop, let's pop over to Photoshop for a second. We got the time. It's just the two of us. Let's take a moment to pop into Photoshop. What is your tool of choice for kind of fixing something like this?
So there's no right way. There's always like 15 ways to do something in Photoshop. I feel like content aware is not going to do it because it's so close to the owl. Probably I would end up kind of copying and pasting the left side and flipping it a little bit and then bringing it over to the other side. And then I would mask around the owl. So I would get really in detail. You're not going to want to do that right now.
No. How about this compromise, though? What if we grab the patch tool? And if I come in, yes, his ear is going to be tricky. But let's come around that a little bit wider than we need. And then take this and grab it and drag it and put it over. And in a lot of ways, this tool is similar to what you're using in Lightroom, except it's able to do a little bit more of a smarter kind of fill than otherwise. Yeah. And then what if we did this? What if we go back to that patch tool? And Tonya, you might be cringing because you are much more adept at Photoshop than I am. But what if we take, oh no, we're not gonna be able to do the patch tool there. So let's do this. Let's get the lasso tool. Let's take this bit of ear, copy, paste. It's now on its own layer. Bring it back over, Command T, rotate it around.
Okay. You could have also, if you right click when you're in transform, you could have flipped it horizontal, which.
Would have been good as well.
Yeah.
And then what we should do is mask, but for real quick, I'm just going to use the eraser with a soft edge and see if we can get it to blend in a little bit more.
Okay, but don't ever use the eraser tool.
Okay, because you have to do the undo to fix it.
That's right. That's destructive editing. So I would always make the mess. Sorry.
Okay. That's all right.
You're trying to be fast, but if you're doing this at home, don't use the eraser tool. So, and this is actually exactly what I would have done to the background.
Yeah.
Instead of the patch tool. So
yeah.
you got a little bit of both here. I don't find that I use the patch tool for large areas very successfully, but
yeah,
every once in a while, it just depends. But again, because it's so close to the owl, like you're getting into the feathers at the ear, and also then I can see like around the neckline, it's going to happen again. So that's why I would have just taken a huge portion of the background, flipped it, and then masked the owl back in.
Gotcha. Yep. Oh, and I'm finding that there's not enough ear from that left because of the way he's turned. So this ear is shorter. So we really need to bring in the background, as you said. So, but with a couple of your tutorials on pen, you have a great masking one that kind of gives you the basics of that. And it really is something those of you who are submitting regularly to the show should start to get yourself a little bit more comfortable with to, kind of fix these little things like that. So, yeah.
Especially because this is like keeper shot, I think.
It's very, very cool. And I love that we have a little bit more space over here and he's almost gazing off into that direction. And again, DH Don Digital is saying, love to see what topaz sharpening would do for this one. I would love to see first it run through a little bit of denoise or softening the background a little bit. There's a little bit more noise in that than I would want. And it almost looks like it may have been a little over sharpened first. So if we just close this for a second, I would say, and we go back to our Lightroom. What is our F11 1500? Yeah, ISO 3200. So we're starting to see a little bit of noise in there. And I think denoise plus the little bit of sharpening that denoise provides, we would maybe have gotten that easy. Pam's ready. She says, make it easy. Masking, right? Yes, that's right, Pam.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Kevin Walk has a shot from the National Shrine of St. Elizabeth and Seton in Maryland.
It has great angles and lines.
Yep. What are you, I almost feel like I'm repeating with Pam's shot. Do we need everything off here on the right? I feel like this ends up leaving a little bit more space down here in this corner than I want. What if we come in?
I have to see it. I don't mind that negative space because I do think it kind of balances a little bit, but
yep.
But I don't know. I'd have to see it to decide.
Yeah. So let me come in, kind of split that difference here. Now I've centered our subject to some degree, and I don't like that.
I think that the negative space in this works well because there's so much information where all of the gravestones kind of get real close together there on the left that it's a good visual break to have that there in the foreground. I would kind of remove that white house in the trees. I feel like if the tree line was solid, and maybe just that little bit of space there, right at the beginning of the image, right there.
Yeah.
Because we have so much information in that corner, I think I would just eliminate the information that's not important for the eye.
Yep. I think that's good feedback. Otherwise, I think this is a lovely shot. Nice blue sky, nice contrast in the clouds. This might also be an interesting black and white shot. If again, anytime you go black and white, I'd really up the contrast a bit, and I would work that sky to really bring the blue down darker and have those whites be really nice and sharp. But I think it's lovely as a color shot too.
Yeah.
Yep.
If you went black and white, I would work on the reds of I guess it's a church building a little bit too.
Yep. And just a reminder, anytime you go black and white, the HSL color panel becomes your black and white mix. So it's going to allow you to really control the brightness values of the different original colors that are in there. So very nice. All right. Cool shot, Kev.
Yeah.
Jeremy Lavender has Admiralty Sunset.
Ooh, look at those colors.
I know. Very nice. And I love just all of these mountain peaks, but then we have just a little bit of clouds passing around this one, which just gives a sense of epic height to me, that it's poking up through the clouds. So anytime you can catch that, it's good. Yeah. I'm a little drawn away by, I feel like this is a little mustache right here. It's just dead center dark.
Yeah, that's a problem for me. I was trying to decide. I think you might want to clone it out.
Mm-hmm.
You might be able to come up a little bit from the bottom, but I don't think I would want to crop that far up.
Yeah. Let's say if we undo the aspect ratio, we come up here.
No, that's not bad at all.
That's not bad. No.
I thought it would be a little tighter.
Mm-hmm.
The only other little nitpicky thing is almost top center. There's like one bright spot.
Right there.
Yep, and I would get rid of that.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I love this. The colors are just insane.
Yep. Very, very nice sunset. I think you treated very well here. Might be able to up the contrast just a little bit. I find that I'm doing that often on my shots. You have a little bit of room, and we could punch up the whites maybe just a bit to get the snow. Don't want to go too far because you're going to start to lose some of that color from the sky that's in the snow, but I think there's room for just a little bit more before you start clipping.
I think that's what's amazing about this shot is how much color the snow is holding. Like, and both the blues and the pinks. It's just really amazing.
Yeah. Oof. Just ghost trees. Yes, much better to do in Photoshop. And I think that it just kind of, it's so much darker than everything else going on that it draws your eye down to it. And you don't want to do that because this is epic up here.
Yeah.
Cool. Nice, Jeremy. Thank you. Douglas has Black Bear Look. Very cute.
So this one feels a little harder for me to see secondhand.
Mm-hmm.
Sharpness on the face.
The sharpness is pretty good. It feels like that there's a bit of noise. 1, 2, focus might have been just a little bit in front. The tree bark and his claw feel very sharp, and then it feels a little different. Doug, you might have done some work to try to bring this face into sharpness, and I think you did a good job, but it does feel just a tiny bit off there.
I wonder if this is cropped hard.
Good. This is, right now we're looking at a 2600 by 3200 with a 7R Mark IV and the 200 to 600. Great combo. F6.3, 600 millimeters. So I think, at F6.3. Go ahead, Tonya.
So maybe it is just the focus is a little off too. So.
Yep, it is cropped a little, and I think focus is off just a little. Even at 6.3, 600 millimeters, you do start to get real fall off with the depth of field. I mean, look at this other tree, which I suspect isn't that far in the background, is very, very soft. Yeah. So you want to keep an eye out for that and bump up your aperture a little bit more than you would when shooting with kind of more normal focal lengths. And that it's tricky in this situation, though, because you are all the way up at ISO 1000. The other thing that you're working with here, a little bit of a gamble, you were down to just 1/250th of a second. So typically you want your shutter speed to be a good bit faster. So there might have been movement with the head that caused the motion blur that you fixed after the fact with something, or it could have been a little bit of depth of field or a little bit of both. But it is a really cute moment, and I love this little glance around. Yeah. I think one of the things that you could do here, Doug, is you could run this through denoise, masking off the face especially, and really kind of soften, because I see a good bit of noise in the soft in the background. And then in the bottom corner here, we have just this little bits of bright green drawing the eye in. And I don't think we want to crop in that tight. Let's see. What happens if we come up, though, a little bit? I've just kind of straight centered his little face, which I don't like as much. So I'd like you to keep that about where you were, but maybe work on masking off or hiding this little bit of bright green in the background there.
It's also a shame that that tree in the background is so bright, but it's going to be a tricky fix too.
It is. Let's just try real quick. I'm going to get the brush tool and I'm going to bring highlights down and just brush on it just to see where it ends up.
And this is one of those that the time commitment to really fix that, I would try to evaluate if this picture is of that value to you. Mm-hmm. Especially just since there are some of the like the sharp and noise issues. But it's such an adorable moment. Like both paws on the tree really make it for me. Mm-hmm. The way they're wrapped around.
Yep. It's definitely, there's a bit of hot spots. You know what, actually, though, I don't know if the auto masking, and turn auto mask off just real quick. Auto mask is that really nice feature where it'll avoid painting in certain areas that it thinks you're not trying to. But in this case, it thought that I didn't want to paint in those brighter spots. It saw that as different. And those are some of the more important spots to get in here. So the O key turns this overlay on and off. So I just can make sure that I've basically painted on all of that. And now we can drop those highlights a bit. And it should come down a little bit more evenly. And I wonder if we drop texture and clarity just a little bit more to try to soften that tree a little better. Still has a couple of those hot spots, which you might want to clone out. But then as you mentioned, Tonya, it is an evaluation of how much time do you want to spend on a picture. You know, I was actually asked that question this weekend in class. How much time do I spend editing pictures? And my quick answer is sometimes for me, editing pictures is a procrastination from other parts of the job that I need to do. And I can spend a good amount of time on a single picture that I find very valuable. But I'm curious, Tonya, how you would answer that.
Oh, that might depend. Like for me, for client work, I feel like I have a really good workflow. And so I think that I'm usually looking at like 20 to 30 minutes an image, depending on how much retouching and additional work I need to do. But if it's a competition piece, hours, like a lot of hours. And if it's a composite, days. Like I have had composites that I didn't finish for 3 months because I was on and off working on it for hours at a time. So it depends on the type of work and what I'm using that image for. So, and there are some images that, you know, maybe I really got it very close in camera. And like with my macro work, I don't have a lot of retouching. I'm a little more purist about that because it is nature. But there's still stuff that I clean up. There's still some light painting. So it just depends. And if I feel like it has a potential to go, like competing with the PPA has messed me up because I know how nitpicky it can get. And so if I think that it has some potential there, then it's really extensive. So you're not just doing cloning for Instagram. You're doing cloning like if I'm printing this on my wall as wall art, I'm going to find the flaw. And so I need to put the time in now.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, and so I think you made the great distinction. It depends on what the purpose is of this image, and basically what its destination is: wall print, competition print, or client image, which hopefully they're going to make prints out of. Yeah, and again, we're not saying that's the amount of time everybody should spend on pictures, but I think it's worthy to know that if this is a really picture you are incredibly proud of, then oftentimes many photographers are spending an hour or more working on an image, and in case of composites, days. So it's good to know. Yeah, great. All right, let's move on. Teresa Rice has got the sights of Seattle. Here, we'll go ahead and full screen again. And what I love about this, Teresa, is one, my hometown. Two, I have not shot from this location. Funny enough, I think my dentist's office has this shot. So it's been in my mind to kind of figure out where this is and shoot, because I like this. It has the Space Needle right here, all the rest of the city, and then you have some of the waterfront too, with our wheel and the old silos of the grain or cement, I'm not sure what, and even some of the stadium back there. It's pretty cool.
Your city is a light show.
It is a bit of a light show. Yep.
That's amazing.
Yep. It's pretty nice. I like this. You know what's we don't have the Smith Tower in here, which is one of our, it's hiding right back there. Yeah. But what I do like is the Space Needle comes up and is completely free. One of the other really big places to shoot the skyline from is Cary Park, which is just over this direction on this hill a bit. But what's happened now is the Space Needle is intersecting almost completely one of these buildings in the background. So it doesn't, the kind of more exciting parts of the Space Needle don't stand completely free necessarily of those background buildings, which has started to bother me lately when I've been looking at pictures, some of my own. Yeah. All right. This is quite nice. Teresa sent a DNG so we could see some of her edits already. So for instance, you brought down the highlights on that building there in the foreground and exposure a little bit. I don't see any other local area adjustments with the brush, but did you do anything with a graduated filter? Nope. No. Pretty nice.
I think I would bring down the highlights on the Ferris wheel a little too. That is the hottest spot for me. Like I keep coming back to that, and I love it, and I love the color of it. But yeah, if it could just be toned down a little more, I think.
Yeah, let's bring highlights down a little bit more. I'm not really seeing it respond. Let me do a new and brush on there. So make sure I brushed on there properly. Yeah, and highlights down. It's one of those things where it is.
You pull the vibrance down just a little bit, because I feel like the shadows are so blue.
Overall, yes.
Well, yeah, or even on that local area. I'm not sure. It looked like when you, well, see, I don't want to lose the color of the rest of it, but the Ferris wheel, when you brought down it looked like the surrounding area got really blue. So I didn't know if you could just pull down the saturation on that. But.
Saturation. And what if we try to warm it just a little bit to balance? A little bit. That's tricky.
It is tricky.
That is, those bright parts are quite bright. Actually I feel like I've made it a little muddy now. But I think your suggestion is great, and that's, if you can work towards that, Teresa, I think that would be good to bring that down a little bit. And maybe up here, flag's a little bright there as well, just a little washed out. I mean, these are pretty minor, but otherwise, I think this is quite lovely. And I really like, it's dark through the trees, but we've got bits of detail along this forested slope that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm so glad that has detail in it. That really works well.
Yeah.
I love this. I think it's really beautiful. I'm so impressed that there are that many colors in the cityscape.
Yeah. Yeah, it's neat, and I love the city. There are so many different places to shoot it from. You can shoot it from the water side way off here to the right, straight across, and the different perspectives that you get. It's a pretty photogenic city.
Yeah.
Nice. Thanks, Teresa. All right, we're going to wrap up with Sean's Smoky Mountains Rainbow Falls.
Is this cropped? Can you tell?
I don't believe it's cropped at all. We have a 4,000 by 6,000, which I don't know what camera Sean's shooting with, but 24 megapixels makes me feel like this is pretty much the camera dimensions.
I just was
What are you
looking
thinking?
for like a tiny bit more room at the top, but.
Gotcha. Yeah. You don't have it in this shot.
Yeah.
I love this soft water. Sean, we don't have any metadata from you. I'm going to assume this is around a second, maybe a couple of seconds, so that we have a little bit of detail up there at the top, but it really just all gets kind of soft down here at the bottom. I don't know, you maybe possibly could have photographed it at a slightly faster shutter speed to just retain a little bit more detail down here, because it really gets ghost-like. But that's minor. Tonya, how do you feel about these sticks down here?
Well, I keep looking at them, so that's probably a problem.
Yeah.
They kind of keep going back and forth between those and the really bright green corner.
Yeah.
So
what if we let's switch this to an 8x10? Doesn't really help us too much, does it? And come in a little bit more. So a couple things I'm looking for is let's get out of being forced to 8x10. A couple things I'm looking for is what rocks that I want to include, how much of the rocks I want to include. I love this very clear, still water down here, but it does have those sticks in it. What do you think somewhere around here? Getting a little tight. Is that enough of the story down below?
yeah, I think so. And it's not that I hate the sticks, but they just become a focal point for me. Like almost if they were like really intentional and it was super wide and they kind of like were the leading line into the waterfall. Like I almost feel like they could have been used as an element like that, but they just kind of, the water's so clear and they interrupt that maybe they could be cloned out even. I don't know.
Yep. Yeah. I think cloned out, or I'm looking at this, I'm always very cautious. Things live in the water. If it's part of its habitat, you don't. But this stick really just seems to be sitting here. And that might be something where you could have gone and just picked that thing up and put it down behind you, or put it down on the rock next to you. And then when you were done, put it back. I think it really, your point of this really still clear water and the jaggedness of the stick just kind of breaks that up.
Right. I move things. I rearrange landscapes all the time for my macro. So definitely, if you could move something like that, it's so much better than photoshopping it out. Yeah,
I agree. That's always, I call that pre-shopping. I don't know if I made that term up or not, but just taking the time to kind of arrange this scene, as long as you're not disturbing wildlife or habitat, I think that's totally fine. And it's great. But this also, I feel like, has a lot of potential for other kind of compositions and shots, just the way the water spills over the rocks here as well, or even the way it spills up above. It's one of those things where we walk up to a scene and it's just really cool. Take some moments and within what caught your eye, find individual scenes and subjects that you really want to zoom in on, figuratively and literally, and capture those as well. So cool. All right. So thank you, everybody who sent pictures in. Just real quick, one more time, if you want to be part of this network and send pictures in the future and get feedback and Lightroom tips and tricks and some Photoshop, especially, Tonya's excellent Photoshop, my kind of moderate Photoshop skills, but together, we manage. You can go to photorec.tv/pen. Now I'm going to stay here for a moment because this is where I want to talk about the neural filters. So let me switch over to Photoshop for a second. And I have got a black and white of Roy and I from way back in 2016. And I want to show you under Filter neural filters, what we've got going on now in Photoshop and some of those different options that are there. So one of the ones we have, oh, I haven't activated it on this. Let me get it real quick. Download. This is how you can get these filters. They might not be, if they have the little cloud next to them without an on-off switch, they're not working yet. And you just say colorize, and it will take the black and white and make it color. Now, you don't know how good a job it did. And I'll tell you what, it didn't do a great job on this image. My t-shirt is a green color. My pants, if I remember correctly, are kind of a just, I don't know, like a brown, a tan color. So it didn't do great there. And in the background, we've got some purple. Roy, I don't remember what color shirt this was here. But you know what? I do think I have it still. There it is. Oh, yeah. Instead of describing it, I should have just switched to it. So,
well, the
so
colors
let's stick this.
pretty different, but if you didn't know that, I don't know if I would have looked at that image right away and said, that's been colorized either.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think I would have, it was a little magenta, but.
Yeah, my legs are looking a little blue, but still pretty impressive. And there are additional tweaks within this. You can change, so shift some of the colors down here. But let me cancel this for a sec. Let's close this one. And do I have over here? Yes. Let me put this one in. This is a color image I captured in Vietnam several years ago. Go to Neural Filters, colorize for this. And it is nearly dead accurate.
Wow.
It's pretty amazing. Her skin tone is great. You can notice, though, there is a little bit of confusion in that she's got an all blue shirt until it comes up into the sleeve. So that's a bit of a bummer. But otherwise, this is kind of eerie in how well it worked.
I think that I have an update to run with Photoshop. I've been editing so much client work, I haven't taken a lot of time to do that. But I definitely want to play with this. And when I was in college, I worked in a photo lab, and one of the things I did was photo restoration. And I would have loved to have this then.
Yeah.
It is so hard to hand colorize.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. Hand colorizing is not something I've ever attempted, and I don't want to. But this gets you a long way there, and it's going to output to a new layer, so you have some options there in how you kind of work with it after the fact. But her skin, this hat, gosh, just pretty impressive. We've shown some of these other neural filters on other shows, so we're not going to go into them, but I'll just show you on the wait list what's coming up is noise reduction. Now, Tonya, you said you were working on a macro this weekend, and you spent some time in Topaz Denoise, and how did that work out for you?
I said wow out loud. Like, I just didn't expect it to be that good. And I had never used the denoise before. And I cropped in, actually it was the ant photo on my Instagram. I mean, that ant is the size of a pin. And so not only was I pushing my macro lens really to its limit, but I cropped in a ton. So, and I shot that at like 7:30 at night. So my ISO is a little bit higher. And I was so impressed at how well that program removed the noise.
Yeah, it's great. And
like, I couldn't use that for competition. Like, that's one of those things where I know, like, this one is a keeper for me, and I like the way it looks, and just the shallow depth of field and kind of the creaminess of all of it. But it really saved it for sharing online, I thought. So
very cool. Yeah. So Photoshop's got a noise reduction coming that I'm really curious to see how well it works compared to Topaz. And then DxO has its Pure Raw, which came out earlier this summer. That you're supposed to apply it to the raw straight out of camera. It's supposed to set you up for better success. It's not something you want to apply to all pictures because it makes them about 3 times their file size. But you have a lot of options for cleanup these days, so it's pretty impressive. Oh, and I wanted to show you this one real quick. I don't remember if we talked about it. coming is face to caricature, which I know you are, you participate in the artist category some,
Yeah.
and some work that looks a little like this. So I'll be really curious to see how Photoshop handles that and where it goes with it.
I have been working on some more caricature type portraits, though not quite like that, but that would be fun. I think definitely when that's out, that's how you should do the thumbnails for the show.
The show? Yeah. And in this case, there
beyond for those.
Yeah. You can hit I'm interested and give them a little bit of details about why you're interested. And I really don't know how you get put on a wait list or whether they read that and say, where you should fall in the wait list. And I don't know what kind of timeline we're talking about for some of these. Are they coming out next release, next year? But again, it will be interesting to see as they add these in. We've played with the smart portraiture before. That's the one where you can make somebody smile who's not smiling enough. And I'll say that for someone who knows Photoshop well, you probably aren't going to use the smart portraiture. Especially I noticed as I was just teasing Chris playing with it the other night after I showed her color eyes, it gives you somebody else's teeth if you weren't smiling enough. So that's probably not what your clients want to see. And you're like, wait, and it tries to do it in such a way that they're not even perfect teeth. So you get somebody else's teeth that might not look as good as your own teeth, or might be better. I don't know. It was a little funny though. So those are some options there that we'll keep an eye on. All right. Again, while I'm still sharing, let me switch back over to Chrome for a second and go to Instagram. And yes, we're looking at Tonya's beautiful macro work, but I want to show you that I have this new little icon here, native in Chrome, that will allow me to post directly from my computer. Now, I had heard probably a month or two ago that they were starting to test that, and it is now live for me on both this main account and a tester account that I have. But as I said at the top of the show, I am more likely to continue to still use something like Plan Only. And let me bring up Plan Only and tell you why. And I have switched to Plan Only. I guess it's Plan Only, not Only. I have switched to this from later because I think their free plan is better, but I am paying them right now. And let's say, for instance, that I wanted to, just post. I got to put a new image in there. Let's say I wanted to post a picture of Roy and I. What it allows you to do is post to multiple places at once. So I can auto post to Instagram, auto post to a Facebook page, and auto post to my Twitter account. And that, the issue I have right now is Instagram. And Tonya, you weren't on the show last week when we talked briefly about this, so I'd love to hear your thoughts. Is Instagram recently said they are going to prioritize video sharing over photos, really. And that's basically to compete with TikTok is the idea there. And I really like the ability to post to Instagram, but also share to these other locations so that I'm not putting all of my eggs in one basket. You have any thoughts about that?
Well, first of all, I like to remind people that we don't own social media, so we have to play by their rules, and it's free marketing. It's easy to get caught up in complaining about it, but I find that it's easier to adapt to the changes that they want if you want to perform well in the algorithm. And so that's not fun because I don't post a lot of video content. But I also try not to get too excited because if you remember, Instagram and Facebook are owned both by Facebook. And so they integrate very well right now. But I remember when Facebook was trying to compete with YouTube and they wanted all videos to be created on the Facebook platform. You couldn't just share a link the way you used to be able to. You used to be able to share a YouTube link and it would play. And then they took that away because they didn't want you sharing YouTube videos anymore. But I feel like people kept using it the way they wanted to, and it retained what Facebook is known for. And there's definitely a lot more videos in your feed. And that's because there are a lot more people who are using video platforms. And so, of course, if that's what they're using, that's what they're going to post. But I think we're going to find the same thing with Instagram where, yeah, they're trying to make sure they aren't losing that edge. Like with TikTok, just like when they added stories, they did that to compete with Snapchat. It still stayed Instagram. We just had an element of shorter things that didn't show up on our grid and that would disappear, which everybody kind of got comfortable with. So I don't know. I don't know that this will last. I think it will be interesting to see if they allow you to share TikToks to Instagram the way they are now. Like, I think that could be a defining factor. If they decide that you can't just share a TikTok to your Instagram story or your Instagram grid, that might be a game changer. But right now, since you can do that, I think that TikTok is going to retain the stability that it has on its platform, and Instagram's just going to try to kind of feed off of that. But that's just my guess.
Yeah. I don't know. And, Twitter, pictures look great on Twitter, and they actually can look better than they do on Instagram. And you're not constrained to the kind of arbitrary crop especially for portrait orientation that Instagram constrains you to. So I think there are some, but I don't think many people think of Twitter as a place to share their photos or to really build a community around photo sharing. It's more, complaining or, seeing what your favorite, followers are up to with Twitter. So, yeah, I don't know.
Twitter lends itself more toward current events.
Yeah.
And maybe that's just how I've used Twitter, but I have not found that to be a solid marketing tool for me. Like, I don't know that I've ever gotten hired from Twitter, but I've definitely gotten hired from Instagram and Facebook. So it's a concern, but also as users, I think you can tell the platform what works for you. If you're interacting with artists and you're interacting with photos more than you're interacting with video, that's going to tell Instagram what you want. So I think that we have a little more power in it than we assume.
Right. It should, except, I feel like Instagram has slowly beaten us down. I mean, Tonya, you say not to complain, but I like to complain. I'm pretty good at it some days. And I feel like early on, the switch from kind of chronological to this algorithm, people were like, there are people I don't see anymore that I know are posting. And if I go look at their page, I see it, but otherwise in their feed, it's very rare. And slowly we got used to that. And there are lots of people that I think we just miss their posts now. And now we're also going to have more of these video shorts that are going to be forced on us. Even if we go and say, I'm only really interacting with photos, I think we're still going to get a higher number of videos in our feed. But it's a good point to make sure that you are still, as you were kind of saying, active within the community, interacting with the followers that you really want to see. That should help steer the algorithm. But I think it's almost like one of those play boats where you think you have a lot of control, but you might not have as much as you think. So
I mean, they're definitely going to, the algorithm is rigged. You just have to make sure that you're consistent about using it the way you want it to be able to decide this is what that person likes based off of their interaction. So we're going to show them more of that. And that's one of the reasons why stories are important, because sometimes it's really hard to get likes and comments on Instagram. But if you're getting people to engage in like a poll or one of those like slider things or message somebody, that tells Instagram that you care about that person's posts. And then you end up seeing them more in your feed too. So you should not be afraid to interact with the post that you like, because that tells Instagram that you want to see their stuff. So,
Good points. Okay. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about our headline for the show, and that is some more macro tips. If you're just joining us, we chatted a little bit about macro right at the beginning of the show, and I think there are within our discussion some tips, but Tonya, do you have some more tips for us for going out there and capturing beautiful macros similar to what you've been posting on your Instagram? And let me get back to that when I can find it. Where?
And hopefully, Roy, if you can bring up some of the questions I saw at the beginning, I kind of forget a few of them, but I saw the comments a couple.
Yeah, I could share those as well.
Okay.
But let's do this here. So we're nice and big full screen. And over here, let me see if I can pull up any of those questions that people might have had about macro work.
I think I could start with the most discouraging tip. And that is that I have so much time into some of these pictures that it's ridiculous. Like the snail, I spent a solid 2 hours with that snail. And he had a stunt double because sometimes he would get mad. Like he would crawl off the little sticks, and then I put him back on. And then after I put him back on like 5 times, he just was like, I'm not coming out because I'm mad at you. So
he locked himself in his trailer and was like, I want to renegotiate my contract.
He was very moody. So then I would just switch him out for another snail, and I would work with that snail until that snail was irritated with me. So like all of these shots, like none of them were like, oh, there's a bug and I'll just take a picture and then I'll go find another one. Every single spot I spent usually an hour. So that's very
time. Take your time. And so let's go back to the snail for a second. What were you looking for? What was it that you were hoping to capture here that was taking that time?
Mostly nailing a decent depth of field. And I mean, I could pull it up. I can't remember, but I'm probably at F11 for this. And I think that was one of the questions somebody asked, like, even when I'm in F11, do I feel like I have to stack? Well, that depends, because I don't personally feel like I have to stack. I like the shallow depth of field of macro. Like, that's where I said like competition kind of messes me up, because I know for PPA, they might be looking for what areas are out of focus, and that might work against me. Like that foreground that's jutting out, that's not in focus, I lose some of that, the back antenna of the snail or feeler or whatever. But as an artist, I think that's beautiful. And so that may not translate well for certain competitions, but I want to have enough of it. I like getting the swirl of the shell, and I like getting the eye that is closest to me and the texture in the snail's body, but I don't mind the fall off. And I'm also really looking at background separation. I love to have a nice background separation. But it's really hard getting the correct distance from your subject and also enough light at the aperture that I'm working with in macro. And it is just a lot of discarded shots getting there.
So I'll say this about the depth of field. One, I don't mind a shallower depth of field, especially for live subjects. I mean, I think it would be incredibly hard to stack with a live moving subject, because you were talking about very slight differences from, your depth of field and needing multiple images to really make an impact there. And if your goal, as you said, is to kind of create this little magic world, there's depth in it. There's depth in a magic world. So I'm totally okay with that. And, like the back antenna or feeler. Yeah, the eyeball stalk is going slightly out of focus. But we've got the near one in focus and all of the shell and such great detail on his little, snail neck that's coming out there. It's very, very cool. So, yeah. Yep, that's a good point. So I know Jeff asked you this in when you posted in Pen. Do you introduce any lights? Because that is a big challenge with macro photography, is getting enough light. You're working at f11. You have to have decent shutter speeds as well, especially with moving subjects and live subjects. Are you bringing in any lights?
So I do sometimes. I was hiking kind of far in for some of these. And he had mentioned about how in nature, the light is usually coming from above. So I think sometimes that adding light can get artificial really fast. And I try to be really careful about that because I do want it to look like nature. But I use sometimes I take a reflector, which works really nice, kind of adds without making it look too artificial. But I also use Adaptalux is a macro lighting studio, and I've worked with them kind of as an ambassador a little bit, and they have some cool products that it actually goes right onto the hot shoe, and you can get different colored filters for it. And I know in my macro Instagram, if you scroll down a little bit, like I have somewhere, they're just all different colored lights on some of my subjects, and it's pretty cool.
Cool. Let's see, how far past our?
I'm guessing it's down. There's one.
Ooh.
There.
Yeah.
Fireball, our resident lizard.
Nice.
So.
Very cool. And that was created with this.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you don't have to use all the different colors. You can have
That's
white.
what I was going to ask.
So Adaptalux has kind of the main piece, and then you get the different colored lights that bend, and you can actually just interchange them. So you can make those all one color, or you can have all the different colors. They're pretty cool.
Very cool. Very cool. And they're all flexible too, I guess.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. Neat.
The problem with that is that sometimes I am not actually that close to my subject. And so I know there's another one on there where I really use the different colors with one of my ghost mantises, but again, I'm not sure how far down.
Okay. But there's so many beautiful macros here. If you're not already following Tonya, right here. Yeah. Yeah. This looks like something from, what's that movie? Last Avatar. That's Avatar, yeah.
A ghost mantis, and I raised some exotic praying mantises for a while, and that was one of them.
Very cool.
I think Jeff was joking when he told me I should just order in some insects, and I was like, I do that. I am that crazy.
Very cool. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I think a reflector is a great idea as well because, again, natural light, it doesn't have to be a giant reflector. You don't need too large. Do you
have a really small one like this big that just rolls real quick and sticks in my camera bag? So
yeah, I love this tree frog. He's the cutest.
He is the cutest.
In this little spot right here. Very cool.
What happened to that tree frog? But
oh no, shh, no, happy endings only. Happy endings only.
Well, really happy ending for my chameleon when he escaped.
Oh,
the chameleon.
yeah.
I was so devastated. I was like, what do I do? Nothing. You can do
nothing. So that's Dion Digital's. I'm just butchering his. I think that's Mike. Let's call him Mike D. Digital. He said, "Do you find even at F11?" So we talked about focus stacking. Have you done any focus stacking? And if so, is there software that you like?
I had done some trial versions of some focus stacking. I think actually Photoshop does a little bit of that in-house, but I don't know. It just wasn't my style. I feel like there are some images, and also you really should shoot for it. I've only shot with a slide a few times, and if you're shooting with a slide on a tripod, then you can do that much more effectively. So I do always use a tripod. That's probably my number one tip is using a tripod for macro.
And I think it's also important or nice to say that as far as I know, that the macro lens you've used for most of these shots is a fairly budget-friendly macro lens. Is that true?
Yeah, I'm using a fairly old Sigma 150, and I love it. I mean, I wouldn't mind trying Nikon's new 105.
It looks lovely.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
At some point I'll get there, but I do really love what I'm getting, and I feel like I know that lens well, so pretty happy with it.
Yeah. That's my tip for macro photography. I have two. One is if you are thinking of trying it, renting a lens is great. But your other option is to buy extension tubes to use with one of your existing lenses. Now, I will say that it's not quite as easy as using a dedicated macro lens in a lot of cases because your working distance is going to be pretty small. So you're using the 150 millimeter, which gives you a pretty decent working distance. As you said, you're not always so close to some of these animals. Can you give us with a show of your hand, like the snail we've been looking at? How far away from that snail would you say you were?
I bet I was about a yard away from that, actually.
Wow. Yeah. Okay.
And
Yep.
that was just to get that much in focus.
Okay.
Couldn't
Yep.
have done that otherwise. But
Yep.
I'm always at least 2 feet, I would say. It's very rare that I get closer and then I'm happy with the results.
Yep. And so that is having a dedicated and a slightly longer focal length macro lens. That's the benefit of that. With extension tubes, your working distance is going to be much less, but you can get $70 extension tubes if you've got a decent lens, your zoom lens or your kit lens. Most modern kit lenses will do okay with extension tubes on. That's a very, very affordable way to try it out.
I have extension tubes, and actually I've used them with my macro lens.
Get some really tight.
Yeah. But that's really, I feel like I miss more shots that way than I get.
Yeah, you're definitely making it more difficult. You got a lot more. Your magnification ratio is going to be a lot higher, but it is more difficult to work. And my other tip is to not necessarily always try autofocus, manual focus to set up and let subjects move into the shot or move into that depth of field that you're working with can be good, or slowly moving your camera backward or forward. And if you're on a tripod, you might find that's tricky. That's where rails and things like that can come into play. But you can, in a lot of situations, just give little nudges to the legs to just move things a little bit closer, a little bit further to really, because again, your depth of field, even at something like f11, you can see here is, what is that distance from one eye stalk to the other? Maybe an inch.
Yeah.
So your depth of field is very, very shallow.
And that's a great point because I only shoot macro with manual focus.
Yeah.
It would just be, your subject is already so tiny that to pinpoint the eye is just so hard with autofocus.
Yeah.
But it's lots of patience, and really, if you get one shot from going out to photograph something, well. So let that be an encouragement to you. Like, you're just really trying to get one gem from your subject. And sometimes that doesn't even happen. But I also think that if you're going to start out, like, don't chase something that can fly away, because that's really frustrating.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, good. Sue's got a great question. She'd love to hear a little bit more. How did you deal with things like breezes? She's out there in the wild right now, and she's struggling with breeze and then blur you're getting as a result of either that movement or that falling in or out of your focus area.
I don't have anything encouraging to say about a breeze. I will pack up and leave if there is a breeze. Like, you just can't. It's impossible. Yeah. You already have such a shallow depth of field, and your subject might be moving, and then to have whatever it's on moving, that might be a good time to, like, pick a flower and put it in a vase and go inside and practice, because you really can't do anything about it. I remember one time buying a thing that would, like, stab into the ground and then clip onto the plant to try to hold it still. If you have a breeze, that does not even work. That is another thing that you have to carry around that does nothing. Maybe it works for something, but not a breeze. Yeah, it's true. And it does seem like those days where I'm like, ooh, there's something really pretty out here. Go inside, get the camera, come back out. And then you notice just how much movement is happening. I'll say weather-wise, typically early morning conditions are a little bit more still. So it might be worth it to get up a little bit early. You also have softer light, less chance of breezes, or at least,
less breeze, and you might be able to do a little more photography. Also in the evening too. So it's midday where you get the heating of the ground and you get a lot more breezes as everything is kind of being shifted around. So that might be something else to try, Sue.
And also, when I was in the mountains, it would get really cool in the evenings. I mean, like it was like 70 degrees during the day, but then 40 at night sometimes. Yeah, it was a big drop. And so I found that around 7 o'clock, the sun was setting and it was getting cold, and then the insects were getting really slow. So I had a small window where I had enough light to keep shooting them, but they were not as active. And so that kind of was a nice opportunity too.
Nice. Good. And then Kevin Walk wants to know if you've ever used photographed snowflakes.
I have. I think there are some on my Instagram there.
Are they?
I used to have my macro on my other Instagram with my portraiture, and I know that I have them there, but I do
found them.
Have some.
Found them. Nice. And what's this backdrop that? What are those snowflakes on in this case?
I think a car windshield.
Oh, cool. Very cool. Yeah. I have seen people taking black paper or cardstock outside, and oftentimes leave it outside so that it gets nice and cold, so that the snowflake doesn't melt the instant it hits this thing as you just brought it out. But I've never tried snowflake photography. I mean, they're just absolutely stunning. This was the same with the same lens?
Yes, it was. I've used the same macro lens for like 10 years.
That's awesome. Hey, it works. You've gotten a lot of great shots with it over the years as well. So let's go back up to the top real quick. If you aren't already following Tonya, WP-macro-wildlife. And again, a link is right down below this video to all of your different Instagrams so that you can follow along with more of that. And of course, your stories where you can see some of the behind the scenes from that as well. So yeah. Okay. Any other macro tips to share before we move on?
No, but I saw Roy had mentioned about butterfly houses are a nice place to start. And if you want to photograph butterflies, those are excellent places, because you can usually set up a tripod in one place and kind of wait for your subject to move to you, because there are so many. So that's a great tip. I love that tip.
Great. Nice. All right. Switching gears a little bit. We were talking about apertures and having to be at slightly higher apertures. I was in Glacier this past week. I have my Sony A1, which now has that shutter mechanism, which closes when you're switching lenses. But it really hasn't helped me too much keep dirt off my sensor. I shot an f/36 shot, and this is my second embarrassing story. Look how dirty my sensor is. It's just absolutely disgusting. Now, I'm a person who's put videos out that says, hey, clean your sensor. It's not that hard. Here's how to do it. And prior to this, a few weeks prior, I did make an attempt to clean the sensor. And in some ways, I feel like I made it worse. Oh, yeah. So I sent it in to get cleaned. I'm a member of Sony Pro Support. And it's a little embarrassing that I made it worse. Two, that my sensor is this dirty. I don't know how. I don't know how it got this dirty. I really don't. But it is a good idea to check in from time to time. And this is typically why I try to avoid shooting at those really, really high apertures. If we go back to something like f/16, I think I have a shot here. You can see that there are still some, it's still pretty ridiculously dirty. So I'm really curious. It's on its way back already from getting cleaned. I'm really hoping it's squeaky clean again. And I promise to the sensor gods that I will do my best to keep this a little bit cleaner, because it's not fun. It's not fun removing dust spots. David Carr did a video for Pen members the other day. It's not the end of the world to remove dust spots, but when we're talking about at this level of dust, it's not fun. That's for sure. So
yeah, that's when how many hours you put into editing a photo drastically changes.
yes, that's a good point.
If
And
it makes you feel better because you're sharing all your embarrassing stories, I did lose my lens cap for my macro lens this weekend on the first day.
Shh. Lady, I've lost so many lens caps. That doesn't help. That's normal.
I will order another one, but I was like, oh well.
Yeah.
I have no idea. I must have like put it down in the first shot and walked away, and I have no clue where it is. So I checked for it. It's gone.
It happens. Yeah, I have found a fair number of lens caps.
For that, so
yeah. All right. I think this is a great place to wrap up the show. That's enough embarrassing stories for me to share this week. And if you missed the first one, go back and watch the beginning of the show. I share a little bit more about that. But Tonya, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. I really appreciate it.
Always. Yeah, I love it.
You can find more of Tonya's work at tonyawilhelm.artist. And from there, get to her fantastic macro work. Just scrolling back through that, there are so many fantastic worlds of macro that you've created. I really, really love those shots. So thank you. Chat room, thank you so much for hanging out with us. Really like to see your comments, your questions. That's always great. Thanks for watching us live. If you haven't already, take a moment to give this show a thumbs up. And of course, follow Tonya. That's a nice way to thank her for her time. We will be back next week. Who knows who will be sitting around with me, but we'll be back. And thank you all. We'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.